Hello, everyone. How's it going? Yeah, okay. Normally I talk a little bit about search and SEO, but with Matt coming, I don't want to kind of steal his thunder. So I guess if there are questions about that, you can ask them in the Q&A. You may have noticed I hurriedly changed the time on the presentation. I guess we've got sort of 45 to 60 minutes. You may have noticed from my appearance, I'm a little bit informal in my presentations. So if there are specific questions as we're going along that you'd like to ask, just throw a hand in the air and we can kind of address them, because if you're anything like me, by the time I get to the end, you'll have forgotten what it was you wanted to ask. We've got quite a lot to cover. And some of this actually, Nicolas covered in the previous session. So how many people weren't in the previous session? Show of hands. Very few. Okay. So for you, it'll be really interesting. For the rest of you, you can yawn and kind of look away. And I'll try and skim over it quite quickly. But I just want to make sure everyone has a basic understanding of some of the cool features that we've launched recently. But first of all, not why am I here or why are we here or anything like that, but before you engage in any new feature on your website, be it real-time, be it social, be it maps, be it anything like that, ask yourself, why am I doing this? What's the point? Am I doing it because my competitor's doing it? Am I doing it because I think I should? Am I doing it because someone told me to? Think about your reasons for actually deploying this content and make sure that you understand exactly why you're adding a new feature. And if you don't understand, then stop and take some time to understand exactly what you're about to do in the market or the kind of area that you're about to enter. Sorry, I'm playing with this. I don't know why. Okay, with that in mind, there's Google. Hopefully you've all used it once or twice, maybe more. But I think the reason that it's been so successful is that it's really, really simple. It's a box with two buttons. Most people don't even click the second button, they just click the first. Some people don't click either, they just hit enter when they've typed in their query. And in fact, with things like the Firefox shortcut bar and Google Chrome, some people aren't even seeing this front page anymore. But the point is, we've got one of the most simple interfaces in the world. So simple that even my mum understands it. And I mention my mum for a good reason. Now, whenever you're thinking about designing new features, again, think about my mum, or your mum, or someone else that you know who isn't necessarily super technical. My mum's the sort of person who still double-clicks links. When she wants to copy text, she highlights it and then clicks edit, copy. I've tried to teach her shortcut keys, doesn't get it. I can't watch her using the computer anymore because it angers me so much. But she represents an average internet user, much more than any of us in this room. You know, we're here to learn, and perhaps at the beginning of the day, some of you guys were. We've got a lot of very smart engineers doing a lot of very hard work to kind of do crazy things and analyze a query and actually deliver results as quickly as possible from a massive array of content directly to you. And we're pulling, as you saw from Nicolas' presentation, from a wide range of sources, you know, maps, video, news, images, blogs. And generally, you'll see, let's do my favorite search for goats. You'll see that we get the results really quickly, generally less than half a second. And we've seen that, in fact, if we've done tests. So we run tests all the time on our search results and try and analyze and understand the effect it has on users. We've done tests where we've taken a little longer to return results, and there's a noticeable drop in users enjoying the experience. Quite how an average user can detect a tenth of a second, I don't know, but it seems that they can in aggregate. So again, think about speed. Keeping things fast is really important. Put into perspective, Facebook has only been around for 4 years. Google Maps, about 4.5 years. YouTube, just over 5 years. You know, if these guys were still in a planning stage, someone else would have eaten their lunch. So if you have an idea, get on with just launching something simple. Measure how users interact with that feature, and then spend time refining it. This is what we do at Google. It's why we launch so many things in beta. We launch a feature, we see how users react. If there are parts they don't use, we'll drop them and focus on something else. If there are parts they do focus on, then we'll evolve those. There's nothing more important than how users actually interact with your website that will tell you what the important parts are. Right, so let's get on to the more interesting stuff. Now, sitemaps. I know this has already been covered, but it cannot be iterated enough how important it is. They're really simple. This is as complex as this presentation is going to get, don't worry. But you can have a list of URLs that you want us to look at on your website. This can take the form of just a plain text file with one URL per line. That's its most basic. If you want, you can add additional markup. So you can say things like last modified date. You can say the change frequency, how often you update the page if you'd rather do it that way. And you can give the page a priority. Now, the priority is only related to other pages on your website. So if you give everything maximum priority, it's meaningless. It's exactly the same as giving everything lowest priority. So tell us about your newest pages and give them the highest priority to make sure we take a look at them. There's no guarantee that putting something in a sitemap will get it into the index, but we do promise we'll have a look at the page. For example, you might have 5 pages that are somehow in your sitemap that are actually more or less all the same content. It might be the case that we look at all 5 and decide the third one is the right one to put in the index, but we will look at them. There are also lots of different types of sitemaps. So if you have video content, again, as Nicola showed, news content, code search, maybe you're into code pages, geo sitemaps, mobile sitemaps, and so on, whatever content you have, you can build a sitemap to inform us about it and make sure that we're able to take a look. And it can actually be a really nice way to make sure that we're able to find all the parts of your website. Sometimes we may have trouble navigating throughout your site, so by supplying a sitemap, we're just informed of all the URLs that you have. Geo. How many of you have used Google Maps? Okay, the majority, that's good. Anyone not used Google Maps? It's okay, we won't bite. It's all right not to use Google Maps. Here is Google Maps. And as I'm sure you all know, you can search for different locations. For example, here's Big Ben in London. And you can hit more. In the UK at the moment, we're hoping to bring this to more locations, but obviously different countries have different concerns about Street View. The UK seem pretty cool with it. I think most people get that the benefit of being able to see street locations outweighs the fact that occasionally you're in there with your face blurred. And in fact, there's one guy I know who tries to get to as many locations as he can to be like this in front of the cars. But one of my favorite features that we've launched in Street View recently is this photos section. And this is where we found photos that are visually similar elsewhere on the internet, typically in Panoramio or other places. So you can click on one of these pictures. We'll actually load it directly here. And then you can click these little buttons. And what it'll do is morph between different pictures and try to understand exactly how all these pictures fit together. And you can get different views from real people having walked around. This kind of underlines, Street View, we're taking pictures, but actually there's real people out there taking pictures too. And you can build up a really interesting index just from real people's pictures, Flickr, Picasa, and so on. But Maps isn't just about Google Maps. There's a Google Maps API. Okay, I said that was as technical as I was going to get. This is as technical as I'm going to get. Who knows what an API is? Okay, not all of you. It means Application Programming Interface. That probably doesn't help many of you who didn't know before. Essentially what it means is you can take one of our products or services and put it onto your own website and then overlay your own data on top. Housing Maps was the first example of this. And actually, they launched before we had the Google Maps API. They hacked Google Maps to put Craigslist listings on top. And that made us think, hang on, wouldn't this be a great service to make available to other people? So we very quickly developed this service that allowed people to use Google Maps on their website and put data on top. I'll show you a very quick demo of Housing Maps. There we go. Fortunately, the internet is quick enough for live demos. I'm not a big fan of presenting slides. I'm going to go to London, just because that's where I live and I know it. And you'll see it's really, really simple. They've got pins showing where the houses are available, and they've got 2 different colors. Red is just a text listing. Yellow means there are some pictures available too. And being able to see where houses are on a map actually suddenly changed the real estate market. Previously, we'd had services that allowed you to do it, but they were maybe a little bit clumsy. Street Map and Multimap in the UK were the 2 biggest providers. But when you wanted to pan or zoom on those services, it reloaded the entire page. With the advent of Google Maps, it's only loading the bits which are changing when you scroll. So we're allowing the rest of the page to stay static and actually making the service a lot quicker as a result. But it's not just real-world stuff that's available in Maps. There's a chap in Holland who's got a private art collection, the Kramer collection.nl. And you're probably wondering where I'm going with this, but it's pretty cool. He's got a bunch of pictures, and what he's done is scanned those in incredibly high resolution. And he's actually using the Google Maps interface to allow you to browse around these pictures. And you can zoom right in and see the high grain of the paintings. That's the maximum zoom for this one, but you can kind of explore and see the real detail and the brush strokes in some cases that's made available. Now, this is really simple to do for an engineer, perhaps. But there's also a program called Image Cutter. If you search for Image Cutter KCL, and I'll put a link into the presentation, Image Cutter UCL, there is a program that the University College London have created. You download it, you feed it an image, and it spits out a Google map with your image broken up into all the tiles in about 10 seconds. Really, really neat. So if you've got content that you want to provide on a map or using the Google Maps interface, you can do that very easily. There are other features for Google Maps too. This is another one of my favorites. You may have guessed, as an engineer, I'm big into video games. So Grand Theft Auto was one of the big games of last year, and actually IGN, which is a game site, put the game map into a Google map. And again, I can scroll, I can zoom, and I can actually add the points of interest. So when I'm stuck in the game, I can find out where the next place that I need to go is. And we're seeing companies, TV companies, start to use this to represent, on a map where particular points have happened. The Sopranos did it famously, so that you were able to browse New Jersey and the Bronx and New York and see where key elements in the plot had happened. So if you'd come late to the series, you could catch up. This presentation is going to be available afterwards, and I've put all the links at the bottom, so don't worry too much about keeping up. And of course, as I've mentioned, sitemaps. Submit your content to Google. We'll index it and make it available. You can see here, I've done a search for earthquake monitor. And this link here returns a Google Earth file. And if I click this, it will open Google Earth directly in the browser. I'm not going to do that right now because it'll take too long, and in the interest of time, I'll carry on. But, well, no, I won't. But trust me, you can click this in your own time, and if you've got Google Earth installed, it'll come up. So that is, where are we, geo. Social. So what's happening with social? Social's an interesting one. There's lots of different providers. Let's ask, how many people on Facebook? How many people on Netlog? Netlog popular over here? Okay, a little bit. Used to be, maybe more. How many people on Twitter? Okay, a few. How many people on LinkedIn? Okay. So at least a few of you are using some of these different services, some of you more than one. Personalization as well is becoming more and more important. Now I'm using the BBC website here just because I know and love it. But what it lets you do, I know Gabriel told me not to run across here, but I'm just going to very quickly. Each of these is a little gadget or a widget that lives on their website. And what happens is you can edit those, you can add keywords to it, and you can actually remove them if you don't like them. You may have noticed by my build, not a big sports fan. So I got rid of the sports section almost as quickly as I could. And I've replaced it with science and technology, because that's what I'm about. They just deploy a cookie, and they remember my preferences. And the next time I come back to the website, that front page is personalized for me. It doesn't take much to do this. And in fact, it's really, really easy to do. And it really will benefit your users if they come back and have a personalized experience. We're going to talk about ways of automating this in a little while. But the other big feature is search stars on Google Maps, on Google Search. So if I do a search for, I'm going to go here and go to google.com, and or google.be, and I'm just going to sign in very quickly with my Gmail account. Now, when I do a search for something, once I'm signed in, I can click these little stars next to the search results. And what that'll actually do is start building up this list of bookmarks or search stars for me. And the next time I come back and I'm signed in, it doesn't matter what browser I'm on, what computer I'm on, if I'm on my phone or whatever, those stars will still be there for those same search terms. And it really allows me to remember what my favorite sites were. So if I've done a search, I think the example we gave when we launched was, in fact, the reason this happened, there was a guy who loved solving crossword puzzles. But he found that the third result down was the one that was best for him, and it was always third down for him. So he was able to put this star next to it, and it meant that it was always at the top. And so all he had to do was search for crossword solver, bang, he always had that result. Didn't matter where he was, if he was at home or at work or whatever. And he didn't have to remember a URL anymore. So people personalizing their search results even is becoming a key feature. So the web, good. I think we can all accept that, right? Social, good. We all have friends. Put them together, hopefully we get something even better. I apologize, those slides are kind of obvious. But social is everywhere. It's underpinned our experiences on the web, maybe a lot more than you think. News sites are typically kind of leaders in getting people to their website. They've got a lot of content, they want page views. They do generally a really good job of driving traffic. But they were kind of almost leaders in social. Most read and most commented articles of the day. That's looking at what real people are doing. What's the breaking news? Well, it's what people are reading. That's how you kind of influence and show to people important information. Amazon. Another great example, people who bought this also bought this. Now they've changed slightly and said 65% of people on this page bought this item, 35% bought that item. Seeing that someone else has bought this product can be massively beneficial. You know, should I buy it? Is it good? Has anyone else bought it? Well, 65% of people bought it. Probably the right decision. Knowing what other people are doing can be very reassuring. Knowing who those people are can bring even more context. But communication trends are changing. There was a survey done to 250 Canadian students, and they were asked, do you prefer instant messaging or emailing? They were students, so they liked the instant messaging. Why? Well, it's instant. You click of a button, you see someone's online. You can see when they're replying. Another click of a button, you can have a voice chat or a video chat. Talking about video chat, my mum is still amazed when we have video chat on Google Talk. It blows her mind. Done it like 15 times, but every time I can see you. Okay, Mum. But you know, for some people, video chat is completely normal. For other people, it's still the most amazing thing they've ever seen. So you need to think about when communicating with your consumer or your future consumer, how are they likely to communicate with you? I'm not suggesting that you guys all jump on instant messaging and start doing one-to-one marketing via instant messaging. That's obviously not scalable at all. But there are some interesting developments, especially within Google, where we're trying to surface some of this information to make it available to people like my mum who wouldn't necessarily be in front of it. The first is real-time search results. I'm going to go here. If we do a search for the French Open, which is happening right now, obviously, you'll see this section down here, latest results. And I'm going to talk a little bit in the hope that we get some real results scrolling through. But for breaking news, yes, I love live demos that work. We'll actually get feeds coming in real time, and you'll see it scrolling down, and you'll see these results popping up. Now, if you want to learn more about this, you can click the latest results link. And on this page here, you'll see a list of the feeds as they're coming in, sometimes from news sites, sometimes from Twitter, sometimes from Facebook, sometimes from MySpace, but we're looking at as many feeds as we can integrate with and pulling this information in as quickly as possible. More interestingly, on the right-hand side, what we're doing is looking at what information is being linked to and shared the most. So what articles are people sharing with their friends? What are they posting on Facebook? What are they talking about on their blogs? Well, on the right-hand side, you can see. So if you want to understand who's searching google.com or is using UK language or English language social media feeds, what articles have they read? Well, it's likely to be these ones because these are the most shared articles at the time. You can also learn some other pretty interesting trends. If we search for Formula 1 up here, and I get rid of the latest section and then go to updates, you'll see this timeline feature that pops up here. Now, if we go back to 2010 and get the year's overview, the interface is a little bit broken because you can tell that we're well into May here, but let's drill into, say, April. Now, Formula 1 is a bit of a cheat and it's kind of a setup because obviously there are going to be spikes on the day that the races actually happen, right? So you can see pretty easily the 3rd of April and the 15th of April, they were likely to be the weekends that Formula 1 races were happening. And in fact, if we search for Formula 1 calendar, and hit this one up, we'll see that, sure enough, 2nd to the 4th of April, 16th to the 18th of April, that correlates. So you're able to see where these trends are building and what terms people are actually buzzing about and when. And you can actually, where have we gone? Sorry, so many windows open. You can actually click directly into these sections and see what people are saying. So we'll historically archive this information and you're able to see what people were buzzing about, what drove a particular piece of information. Right now, we're only going back to February, but we're hoping to integrate archives all the way back to 2008, so you're really able to explore historic data. It's kind of for those of you who know Google Trends or Google Insights, it's a bit more of a view into what's happening in real time as opposed to what's just happening in plain old search. And we're seeing people really getting interested with this. One of the most surprising things I found was, again, a search for goats. If we go back to 2010, you'll see this massive spike at the end of March. I think it was actually in April here, April the 13th. And what actually happened was The Men Who Stared at Goats was released on DVD, so people were just buzzing about that. But it's one of those surprising things. I'd have no idea that that was the case until I went in and explored. So sometimes the most esoteric search terms can actually teach you a lot about what people were thinking at the time. The other feature, which, where are we? Sorry, lots of jumping around. The other feature, which Nicola has already touched on, is social search. Now, if I do a search for Android, which is our mobile operating system, you'll see down here at the bottom, I actually get social search results here. And this is looking at the circle of my friends. Those people who I know through Gmail, through my Google profile. Do you guys all know Google profiles? Have you seen those? So if you go to google.com/profiles, I apologize for what you're about to see. This is me. And what you can do is hook up different services. So this is my blog. It's useless, seriously, only my mum and I read it. My Xbox Live gamer tag, my Google Maps reviews, Twitter and Facebook. And you can actually, what Google will do is have a look at those services, have a look at the page that I've registered, find out who my friends are and who my friends' friends are, and then show me who these people are within my network. So I've got direct connections 47 from Twitter and friend feed, chat buddies and contacts within Gmail 76, but then 2,900 nearly people connected through friends of friends. So when I do a search, I can get information from people within my extended social circle and learn more about who they are. And also find out useful information. Going back to the idea of Amazon, you feel reassured when you see that other people have bought something. I know who these people are. I know that Rito is the Android expert for Europe. And I know that Dave Naylor's a really top SEO guy. So I know that stuff that's written by them in their particular fields is going to be trustworthy. On the other hand, when I see posts from myself, I know that that's probably not to be trusted because I'm just talking nonsense. But having that context, knowing who these people are, can give you a real understanding. Otherwise, it's kind of a, it's a blind click. Is this person authoritative or not? Google Buzz is something else that we've launched recently. It's integrated into Gmail. So if you've got a Gmail account, you automatically get Buzz. And what Buzz lets you do is kind of aggregate your feeds from multiple services. So from Facebook, from Twitter, and from a bunch of other places. And you can see them together in one place. And people can comment very easily. And it's not just about microblogging. You can post images and videos and everything else. For me, I feel that I've already got enough places that I'm engaging. Other people are finding this really great. For me, the killer feature of Buzz is actually this, putting it on a map. Having real-time feeds with geolocation, so actually seeing what people are talking about and where they're talking about it, becomes incredibly useful. I've got a confession to make. Earlier I told you I hate sports. Of all the sports, I hate football the most. I'm an awful Englishman, the worst. All my friends love football and they berate me constantly for not enjoying it. I just don't get it. But I live also right next to the Arsenal stadium. Don't ask me why. But I was going home on the bus one evening and the traffic on Camden Road was just backlogged. It wasn't going anywhere and I couldn't work out why. So I pull out my phone and I'm just having a play around. And I don't know if you guys do the same, but sometimes even though I know where I am, I'll look at Google Maps and check my location and be like, oh, I am there, that's nice. And I saw these buzzes nearby. You guys do that, right? I'm guessing that's why you laughed. There was a collection of buzzes around the Arsenal stadium. And it turned out that there was some Euro Championship match with someone from Germany. And so there was just a huge amount of traffic trying to get to the stadium. I knew that that generally meant that the bus wasn't going anywhere for 20 minutes. So I got out, walked, beat the bus home. And so Google Buzz actually saved me time getting home. But you can imagine that walking around a new city, or walking around even a city that you do know, and being able to see what's happening nearby. Maybe there's a concert, a store opening, maybe there's money off at a cinema, maybe there's a special offer happening. Being able to see that right on the map, when it's only valid for a few hours or a day or two, becomes incredibly interesting. We've recently launched an API to Google Buzz that allows you as website owners to push information into Buzz with a geolocation. So if you've got events happening, that are kind of time-based and location-based, push them into Buzz. Then people who have Google Maps, either on their mobile or on desktop, will be able to see those when they're searching maps, just normally. You can see this feature in Google Maps right now. If I go to maps.google.com and I click on More and then Buzz, hopefully, there we go, all these little speech bubbles will start to pop up. Now, I had a look at Belgium and Brussels specifically. There aren't a lot of buzzes happening in Brussels right now. But there are still people who are using Google Maps. And if they're using it on their mobile, maybe they're visitors to the city like me, they're going to see those buzzes. I didn't know where to eat last night. I ended up going just to somewhere around the corner from the office. But if I'd seen a buzz that said, 10% off for new visitors to this restaurant, amazing Moulin Frites, then maybe I'd have gone down there, who knows. But without that information being delivered directly to me, I'm not really going to go looking because I'm lazy, I think, like most other people, fundamentally. So the social web, there's 5 eras. This is a Forrester report that came out April 2009. You can see at the top, but it's been scarily prescient. They've really been spot on in terms of the evolution here. The first section, social relationships. This is the idea that you join up to your social network. You join LinkedIn, you join Facebook, you join MySpace. The second, social functionality. This is the idea that the network becomes a platform for applications. So how many people have played Farmville? You can admit it. I played it once. No one? Okay, well, Zynga Poker, or I'm sure at least some of you have had sheep thrown at you on Facebook, or been bitten by a zombie, or been told that your friend likes this movie, do you like it too? Click here to answer. That sort of stuff. You've all seen it. Some of it's very, very good. Some of it's a little more spammy. But the point is that, I think, is what helped Facebook to really grow. The fact that it was more than just, here's my friend, and being able to leave a message on their wall. You could actually start to spend, or some people would say waste time, on their network. And sure enough, as soon as Facebook deployed this platform, every other social network said, we want to be a platform for applications too. And some of them met with good success, others with limited success, but I think we can kind of all accept that Facebook has been the runaway winner with almost 500 million users now. They've got something like 400,000 applications on their network. Now, even if only 1%, 4,000 of those applications are good and interesting and worthwhile, that's still more than the combined total of Xbox, PlayStation 3, Nintendo Wii, and Nintendo DS games combined. There's only about 3,000 of those out at the moment. So it kind of puts it into perspective. The next stage, social colonization. This is where it starts to get really interesting, I think, for website owners, and in fact for users to some extent. This is the idea that you can log into a website using your Facebook or your Google or your Twitter or your Yahoo or your OpenID. You're not having to register for another website. I've got a confession to make. I quite often lie on website registrations. I suspect some of you do too. Let's ask for a show of hands. How many people have ever lied on a website registration form? Yeah, look around the room, more than you might think. And I used to be an engineer. I used to write user registration systems. And I can tell you for a fact that registration zip codes, when you ask someone for a zip code, it skews towards one of two places. One is Schenectady and one is Beverly Hills. Why? Zip codes 12345 and 90210. Those are the zip codes that people know. When they're prompted for a zip code and they can't be bothered with another registration, they'll put in something like that. The only thing they're really going to tell the truth about is their email address, because chances are you're going to get sent an email and then have to open your email and then click on the email and then be taken back to the website and told, brilliant, we trust you now, you can log in. And if you can remember your login details, you then log in, and then you've got to find what you wanted to comment on and then comment, and chances are you've kind of lost the will to engage with the website by that stage. Facebook Connect, Google Friend Connect, Yahoo ID, Twitter ID, all these services allow me as a user to log into your website using my credentials from a website that I've already got. So using a login that I know and that I use every day, I can connect to your website. Why is that good for you? Well, I'm honest about who I am on Facebook. It's impossible for me to be that 90-year-old woman from Beverly Hills who owns $2 million a year, right? Because if I try to make friends as that person, people are going to go, who are you? I have to be me. I have to be, kind of Chewy, the 35-year-old geek, to make my friends, because that's my friends know me as that person. Which means that when I come to your website, you're getting real information about who I am. And more importantly, the fourth stage, you're getting real information about who my friends are. It's easy for me to actually talk to my friends and share information on your website. The final section is social commerce, and this is the idea that as people start to have these shared social experiences, as you go to a website and share it back and talk about what you've been looking at or what you've been buying, you'll have people who become experts within the field. I know that if I want to buy a new phone, I'm going to go straight to Rito, who's our Android expert, and say what's coming out or what's just launched, what's the best handset on the market. If I want a good nanny, I'll go to my mum, because I know that she knows a bunch of nannies nearby. And if I want to learn about computers, well, I already know quite a lot about computers, but my friends might come to me. And in fact, Dell tapped into this a little bit with something called Dell Swarm, which allowed me to configure a computer, share that configuration with my friends, and every friend who wanted to buy the same configuration earned the whole group a discount. It's a really nice idea of just kind of leveraging the fact that some people don't know the difference between a 600 and 800 megahertz processor, and they don't really know the difference between 200 and 500 gigabyte hard drive. I do. I can tell them what they might need, and everyone's a winner. Just so you guys don't think that this is scary in the future, kind of let's worry about it in 5 years. PowerPoint animation. It's happening right now. Everyone here is on a social network if they're going to be. You've probably played with an app or seen a friend who's played with an app. You've seen these Facebook like buttons or Facebook Connect or Google Friend Connect buttons on different sites. And you're starting to share content back with your friends. Now, how are you sharing? Well, again, think about my mum. Typically, I'm a power user. If I want to share something, I'm going to get this URL, I'm going to cut it, I'm going to paste it, I'm going to send it in an email to a friend or post it on Twitter. If that URL happens to be a Google Maps URL, then I might want to use a shortener. So you can actually get extensions which will immediately shorten URLs, and I can just cut and paste that link up there straight into Twitter. I know to go to Twitter. My mum doesn't. Although what's scary is I've seen her starting to share Facebook content. Or share content on Facebook. And I kind of said, Mum, how do you even know about this? She said, well, I've seen the Facebook button, that little F logo on some sites, and when I like something, I'll click it. And it's like, all that she has to do is click that button and say, OK, and suddenly all her friends, which is basically me and my brother, will learn about what she's found that's interesting. But you can't make it difficult for your users to share stuff. They're just not going to jump through the hoops to do it. I see on corporate websites, I spoke to a really big mobile phone manufacturer, or mobile phone operator in the UK. I won't tell you who, but you could probably find out by searching. But they were really proud that after 6 years, they'd finally got an email this page link on the bottom of all their pages. It's like, really? Is anyone honestly emailing pages anymore? They're not, they're sharing, right? But where do you start with this stuff? There are so many networks out there. This screenshot now is about 3 months old. And I'm pretty sure some of these guys won't exist anymore. There's probably a lot more people who've since started up that aren't even featured here. But you as a company, how do you know which networks you should be enabling people to share on? Well, you can go like TechCrunch. Again, look to the news sites. These guys tend to lead. Have the Facebook like button, have the Google Buzz button, have the retweet button. You know, those are probably the 3 top ones. Maybe it's MySpace, maybe it's other services. But are those 3 enough? Is that where your users are coming from? Especially once you get away from kind of the English-speaking market, you start to see more niche networks that are becoming important. So look to other news sites. How many of you have seen this share button around on the web? Or the add this button? Most of you have seen it. How many of you have actually clicked on it? Some of you, OK. And I can tell you for a fact, my mum's clicked on it because I've seen her sharing stuff. So people will, if they enjoy content, they'll want to share. That was the Telegraph. I'm going to take you very quickly to the Times Online. I think they've done an even better job of enabling sharing really easily. I'm just going to click on the top news article, whatever it might be. So I apologize in advance if it loads. Yeah, there we go. OK, that's not too bad. Political. He's an ugly man. OK. You'll see at the bottom of this article, they've put the share link. Instead of where the Telegraph have it at the top, and then you kind of scroll down, and if you remember, you scroll back up and share it, it's a bit of a disconnect. Here, when you get to the end of the article, that's when you're going to think, this is good, now I want to share it. What network do I share it on? Well, this button here allows me to share it on 286 different networks. And I can definitely find the network that's right for me, whatever that might be. Maybe it's Favlog or Fresky or, well, FriendFeed, I know. Friendster, wow, is Friendster still around? OK. But the point is, I don't have to keep control of this. There are companies that will build these buttons for you, and you just embed them easily on your website. How do you do this? It's got to be quite scary and quite difficult, right? And it's really long. Well, it's not. See this Add This button at the bottom? You'll also see it here when you just hover over this Add This link here. And if you just go to Google and search for, if you can type, share button, you'll see that Add This, Share This, all these different sites are featured right there, exactly where you'd expect, under searching for share button or share button. There we go, share button. So you go here, you click this link, and you're taken to this page. Select your service. Well, you guys have probably got a website. Select your button style. Well, do I want a big long share one or a little share one or a share this? Whichever one you happen to want. Let's say you haven't got much space on your website, so you're going for the smallest button. Do you want analytics? Well, yes, you do want analytics, but in the interest of speed, we'll skip over that. And then you hit Get Your Button. That's it. You've now got some code to cut and paste onto your website, and people are able to share that page with 280, whatever it was, websites. It didn't take very long at all. And it doesn't have to be difficult. Going back to the whole baby steps idea, which networks do you pick? I don't know. I don't know what your site is. I don't know what's right for you. But using something like this, you can measure very, very easily which pages are being shared and which networks they're being shared to. Once you understand that, that's when you can start investing time and money and engineering resource in actually building out custom features for these websites. But don't go down the road of building something for Facebook if it turns out that all your users are coming from LinkedIn or from Twitter. Spend the time to kind of analyze the data first. Just as an example, here's the Search University website. Sorry, embarrassing you guys a little bit, but there was no share button. There's always room for a share button somewhere. right? It doesn't have to take up much space. You can put it wherever you want. And if you want to put it next to each of the topics, well, that's fine too. But the point is, everyone's got a little bit of space on their website to drop one of these buttons in. Think about where it makes most sense to put it, but keep it in there. On that note, also, I noticed you guys took a screenshot of Google Maps, and that's fine, lots of people do it, it's not a big deal. But it brings me to my next point of enriching content on your website really easily. How many people in here would consider themselves engineers or programmers? Yeah, not many, I didn't really think so. So what we did about a year ago was launch this site called Google Web Elements. And if you go to google.com/web elements, pretty easy to find, you'll see a bunch of different services that you can embed very easily on your website. They go from everything from YouTube News, virtual keyboard if you've got strange characters, SideWiki, spreadsheets, translate, and all sorts of other good things. But probably the most popular and front and center is Maps. Now, what does Maps let you do? Well, I'm going to say Le Meridian Hotel, Brussels, Belgium. And I'm going to say marker title, search university. And you'll see that this map is changing in real time as I've added information. And what it's doing is giving me a piece of code down here that allows me to embed this directly into my website. Now, an image is fine. Obviously, the marker was really clear about where this was. But the image doesn't let me easily zoom in to see in detail where this is. It doesn't allow me to get directions very easily, which the embed does. And this doesn't cost anything. You've seen I've configured it in less than 30 seconds. And I can just cut and paste this block of code onto my website, and bang, I've got a map. Again, this stuff doesn't have to be difficult. You don't have to program. You don't have to be crazy, mad, knowing HTML and being able to program for years to be able to start engaging and putting richer features on your website. We really want to make it as easy for you as possible. If you see people then interacting with your map a lot, then maybe that's the point at which you go, okay, we need to get an engineer in to start building this stuff. That's Web Elements. The other thing, we've talked about YouTube, or Nicola talked about YouTube a little bit earlier. Hopefully Monty Python translates. It seems to be fairly international. You guys probably know what it is. There was a question actually that was, should I put video on my website or on YouTube? My answer would be put it on YouTube and embed it on your website. The cool thing about YouTube is that you can you can have a channel page that has a certain amount of control. But you can also then optimize the page itself. So you can have the title, and you can have the description, and you can add tags. And also YouTube's got pretty good position in the search results. So it allows you a good chance of featuring. Now, why am I showing Monty Python? Well, it's a really interesting example. Monty Python was some of the content that was on YouTube that hadn't really been uploaded by them. Monty Python, I don't want to insult the guys, but they're of the older generation. They're maybe not so switched on about the internet. And so after YouTube had been around sort of 3.5, 4 years, they were kind of looking and thinking, why is all this content up there? Some of it has got millions of views. What are we going to do about this? Do we send in the lawyers? Do we take it down? Do we, how do we deal with this? They've actually put together a really funny video that I recommend you watch. It's on their channel page, and it's just all of them talking about this experience and how they came to this conclusion. What they did was search for the top 25 clips on YouTube that had been uploaded by users. They took those clips from their archives and uploaded them in HD. And all they did was tag them and describe them properly, but also put a link to Amazon to buy the DVD. Their sales went up 23,000% in the first week. They're still up 15,000% from previous to this campaign. And they've done nothing. This isn't a website. They haven't built their own content. All they've done is put up some YouTube videos. People who come to YouTube click on things. And often people who are engaging with content want to engage further and buy. The reason I'm saying this is, we can get involved with all this rich media. We can get involved with all these crazy new opportunities, but don't forget the basics. Make it easy for people to find their way back to your website and actually engage and purchase and convert and download and register, or whatever it is you want to do. Make sure it's easy for people to find it. Very few people, as a result of watching this video, are going to go searching on Amazon for Monty Python, but they are going to click this link. And they may not have been planning to buy when they click that link, but once they get there, they might think, actually, you know what? I love Monty Python, and buy it. And that's what we've seen happening. Okay. Cloud computing. How many people understand the term cloud computing, are comfortable with it? Okay, a few. Okay, so for those of you who aren't, here's a rapid introduction. In the 60s, mainframes were the big deal. This was before my time, but my mum tells me about them. They used to have these big servers somewhere in an office, And then people would have these little terminals that just did kind of green on green or green on black. And they were what were called dumb terminals. They inherently had no processing. You connected remotely to the server and did all your processing there. Then mini computing came about. Mini's kind of a misnomer because they were still, as far as I can tell, the size of fridges. But it meant that you had your own kind of dedicated computer, at least for a group of you. Then personal computers, the idea that you really could have something on your desk. Then internet access to computers became widespread. You know, some of you might remember the early days of dial-up, 9600 baud, where it took literally hours to download some text. And there's actually a really funny video of one of the first newspapers experimenting with digital editions, and this guy kind of hooking up to an acoustic coupler, which were the old modems you had to sit your phone on top of, and downloading the news and watching it scroll line by line. It's funny. Then came cloud computing, and this is really just the idea that it's almost gone full circle. We have these phones, you know, BlackBerry, whatever it might be, that can connect to the internet. And they inherently don't have as much processing power as a laptop or a desktop, but they're able to get a view onto servers which do. A great example, we'll talk about it in a minute, but is Google Translate. You know, this phone can't really translate into 65 different languages, but Google's got servers that can. So why not capture the information here, send it to Google for processing, then return it to the phone? That's kind of the idea of cloud computing. Offload the processing onto the internet, somewhere central. And of course, now we're starting to see mobile internet becoming more and more important, and there's a section about that at the end. But what is the cloud? Well, as I've said, the cloud is just the internet, and different devices connect into that internet. There are a few trends which are driving cloud computing. Falling cost of storage, you know, hard drives are getting cheaper. Broadband is becoming more popular. It's easy to get hold of. And democratized tools of production, the idea that, you know, your phone has a camera on it. Most people will take pictures with their phones now. I've seen a few of you doing it today. There's two approaches to the cloud. One is from a user's point of view. It's just cloud storage. So in the traditional era, we'd have a document. We'd write up a document, and then we'd send it out to 4 people for feedback, right? And person number 2 would immediately reply because he's got nothing else to do today, and he'd return with some changes. And then person number 3 would have seen the first document and done some changes to that. And then person 1 makes some changes, and then they wait for person 4, but he doesn't reply, so they have to merge all those changes back into a single document. Then they send it out again, and it seems like person 4 isn't involved, and they make some changes, and then person 4 comes back from holiday, and he's making changes to the original document. And it's like, how do we merge all this stuff? Not pleasant. I'm sure you've all been through it, right? We've all had documents emailed which suddenly get out of scope. The idea of the cloud is that you store your document somewhere centrally. We're seeing now Google has got Google Apps and Google Docs. Microsoft with Office Live have launched something. Amazon are kind of toying with this. IBM are looking at providing a solution. Yahoo aren't far off. This is becoming a really interesting idea to a lot of people. The idea is you have this document stored centrally, and all of you connect to this single instance of the document. You log in whenever you're ready, you make your changes, and those changes are reflected immediately to anyone else who comes back to look at that document. It really means the end of version control. Obviously, you can still see the past revisions. You can see who made them. You can control who can access this information, but it means you're not having to worry about making sure that people are looking at the right version of the document. The other side of this is cloud computing. This is the idea that, you know, traditionally, if you wanted to build a web service, and before I was at Google, I was in startups for 10 years, kind of, and the thing you'd have to do in a startup, and even at, you know, larger businesses, you'd have to raise money, you'd have to buy some computers, you'd have to write your software, you'd have to host the computers, get internet, you know, get security, get backups, all that stuff. Bit of a nightmare. And generally, anything between £10,000 and £50,000 up front before you can even think about starting a business, if it's online. These days, cloud computing allows you to leverage the infrastructure of large players, like Microsoft with Azure, like Amazon with EC2, like Yahoo with Hadoop, and like Google with App Engine. We've got a lot of idle CPU power sitting on our servers. We've got a lot of storage that, you know, we're not always using. So we want other people to take advantage of it. A good example of this is Obama. When pre-election, he did something called a town hall. And what that meant was people could log in and use Google Moderator. For those of you who don't know Google Moderator, it sort of crowdsources questions. People can log in, they can type questions, other people come in, they're given these questions at the top, and then you can say yes or no, I want to see this question. And then after a period of time, you've got an idea of which questions are the most important. So Obama could turn up and see what the 200 of the 200 questions that have been asked, here are the top 25 based on what people really want to learn about. And there are mechanisms in to ensure that, you know, one person can't go in and just hit it 800 times. But traditionally, you know, this was the traffic pattern for this website that they put in place. When it was kicked off on the whitehouse.gov, it saw about 100 queries a second. That's pretty significant volume. Then it tailed off, and then CNN did a piece about it, and that saw some coverage, and then Google linked to it on their homepage, and that saw the same amount of coverage, and then people started to blog about it, and that got even more coverage, and then people who'd wanted to see it kind of died off. And then the deadline for submissions came, and suddenly there was a massive amount of people visiting it. And in fact, it peaked at almost 700 queries a second. And then it died off, and then the town hall began, and people were there looking at the questions in real time, and then finally the wrap-up blog post drove a little more traffic. In the traditional model of computing, what you'd have to do is first estimate the maximum amount of traffic that this service was going to get. Then you'd have to provision computers to handle that maximum throughput. So in this case, a whole stack of servers to handle 700 queries per second. But basically, any time that this blue line is not touching this red line, you're wasting money. You're wasting money on CPU, on electricity, on bandwidth that isn't being used, on cooling in the data center, on all these different things that you really don't need to be spending money on. So what can you do? Well, you can leverage these cloud platforms. Google has App Engine that allows anyone to write code in Java and upload it to our servers. We'll scale it transparently for you. We'll give you reports on how much it's being used. And we'll give you enough quota to run about 5 million page views a month for free. After that, you have to start paying. But realistically, if you can't work out how to make money after 5 million page views a month, probably it wasn't the best business idea to start off with. But the point is, it's easy for now. If you have an idea, you can get it operational in a matter of hours, or even a matter of minutes if you're a really hot programmer. There's massive opportunity. How many of you, I met an electronics retailer in the UK a little while back. They had a 9-month delay on pushing code to their website. I've spoken to some of you guys, and it's not quite as bad as 9 months, but I hear weeks, sometimes months, in terms of having an idea and actually getting it onto the website. It's got to go through testing and staging and processing, and there's got to be a business case, and someone senior has got to okay it and sign off on it. And there are all these delays in place. Using something like App Engine, this big retailer was able to actually test on different domains ideas really quickly. Measure, and within a couple of weeks, they'd see what worked, and then they could turn it around, turn that into a real idea. They'd have the business case, they'd proven it worked, and they could go through that kind of laborious process of pushing content to their main website. It basically allowed them to test really easily and really cheaply. The next big thing, HTML5. Are we okay for time?
15 minutes.
Okay, cool. So the next big thing, HTML5. How many of you have seen a Flash website? Probably most of you. You might not know it, but you probably have. Disney is probably one of the biggest examples of Flash websites. The problem with Flash traditionally is that it's really hard for search engines to see what's in there. The advantage of Flash is that you have much more control over the design of the web page. You're really able to see, you're really able to control the user experience. You know that the font and the words are going to be this size and this point, and the graphics are going to look exactly like this, and the animation is going to be beautiful. The downside is that, loading. And actually that puts a lot of people off. Speed is key. People want content fast. HTML5 allows some of the richer features of Flash, but in a basic web page. What this means is we're not having to use a plugin anymore. Now, Flash isn't going to go away overnight. There's too many people who use it, understand it, program in it, and just get it and can do beautiful things. But HTML5 is becoming a viable alternative, especially for developers who are just starting to come out of university, or maybe they're still at school, and they can't necessarily afford the Flash authoring tools. HTML5 is open. It's just a web page. So all you need to do is go and read the specification and get programming. And you can have a look at HTML pages just by hitting Control-U, or View Source. And you can actually see how web pages are put together. Flash, obviously, it's compiled. It's a file, and you can't see how it works. So again, open is cool because it allows people to understand cool tricks easily. I'm going to shut down some of these windows. Here is Sports Illustrated. This is a website that's running entirely in HTML5. There's no Flash, and there's actually very little JavaScript. For a magazine, I think it's especially interesting because Sports Illustrated is all about the beautiful photos. I just click the link there, and if I move to the side here, you'll see this little arrow pops up, and I can click and it'll scroll to the next one. But actually, I can just use the arrow keys to scroll between different content, and it's kind of got real visual impact. And you can do some really interesting things. So here's the order for the magazine. I can actually reorder it in real time and say, well, this is the order that I want my magazine in. And then I'll go ahead, and it will actually give me those documents in the order that I choose. I can have rich features like real-time polls. So I can tick on something, and it'll actually show me the results right there. Instead of just having static images, I can actually embed video directly in here. So I can click play and, the internet allowing, it's okay. They're not using YouTube, that's why. You can actually see videos and richer features directly in the HTML page, which is kind of cool. You've got different types of content, but also, let's say we're watching this video about NFL. I can actually drag that then into my video playlist sitting at the bottom, and there's my video playlist, and it'll remember for next time that that one was interesting to me. Now, the video playlist isn't a feature of HTML5, but all the features on the website have just been written using standard HTML. And because it's standard HTML, I can copy this text, but they can also be confident that whatever information they put on the page is going to be visible exactly as they wanted it to. More importantly, search engines can see what's going on. They can actually index this content and deliver people directly to it. I'm going to skip ahead because there's one more pretty cool feature. Google Buzz obviously can be integrated directly and it'll come in real time. But you can have these kind of features, and this is just a canvas element in HTML5 that allows me to see related articles or more MBA articles, or to be able to see photos, or even to share it with my friends on different services right from the web page. Let's close that off. And I think what will be most interesting for you, this is an example of what might be interactive advertising. So normally when you read a magazine, you'll see a full-page ad or a half-page ad, and it'll be for something beautiful like a Canon EOS camera. And you'll kind of think, well, maybe I'll go to a shop and maybe I'll try that out. But beyond just a picture in a magazine, it's hard to understand what the benefits are. I can hit try now, and maybe I want to see what the different lenses do. So I'm going to pick this one and drag it onto there. Well, that's going to allow me to have a bigger zoom. What do the different filters do? Sepia tone is going to make it look like that. Grainy is going to give that effect. And it's allowing me to actually see what would happen were I to own this camera. Well, I want to go and try this out, or at least buy it. Great, there's Google Maps. It's integrated right in. It's using the API. I can click on this and find out where these people are. Go and find them. You can maybe understand where the user is using geolocation and actually direct them to stores directly near them. The point is, this stuff is easily possible using HTML. It doesn't have to be rocket science. Someone who can write a web page can get started with this right away. They don't have to do any extra training or learn any extra languages. And then, of course, if you want, you can read about soccer. The other thing about HTML5, this is a website called Get Clicky. And it's going to sound super geeky, but it's one of my favorite web pages. It's the global market share of web browsers. The link's here, they make it open. They analyze a whole bunch of different websites and then just publish which browsers are accessing content. The reason I like it is because it shows Chrome is growing a little bit. But you can see at the top Internet Explorer, then Firefox, then Chrome and Safari kind of wallowing at the bottom. But what I find really interesting, and if we go to this web page right now, they're using Flash, no bad thing, but there we go. When you scroll over here, you'll actually get a percentage breakdown. And the dips in Internet Explorer are on the weekends. So people are stuck using IE at the office. When they go home over the weekend, you see them using Firefox, Safari, and Chrome. Because they're the browsers that they choose to use outside of the office. I think we're going to see this trend continuing. And you see that the trend at home is kind of evenly split between Chrome and Safari, and then Firefox has a bit more. But people are using browsers that are HTML5 enabled right now. These browsers will all run that website without any trouble, except maybe IE6. Finally, mobile. This is a properly interesting trend. Mary Meeker works at Morgan Stanley. She is the godmother of internet trends. She seems able to predict the future with worrying and scary accuracy. What she's predicted is that mobile users are going to be more than desktop users within the next 5 years. But actually more interesting than that, because that's 5 years away, is this little box here. And this shows me that this year, more people are going to access the internet for the first time using a mobile phone than a desktop PC. So there's going to be more smartphones sold that can access the internet than desktop PCs that can access the internet. Mobile is only going to get bigger. But how do you know which platform to use? And in fact, mobile doesn't necessarily mean a phone. We've got the Dell Streak coming out, the Apple iPad. These are tools which are mobile, but not in the traditional sense that we might think about it. Google have, this was an April Fool's joke, it's pretty funny. I won't show the video because we haven't got enough time, but it's Google Translate for animals. And it was a mock-up, but the idea was you kind of held this thing up to your cat or your dog, and it would go, and then it would say hello. But actually it's based on real technology, which is Google Translate for humans. And I mentioned this earlier, but the idea is I can talk to my phone. It has text-to-speech. It can work out what I've said. It can send it off to Google to translate. Within a few seconds, it'll actually come back and display on my screen that language or that phrase in a foreign language. I used it in Spain to buy a train ticket. My Spanish is appalling. And so I was like, how much is a ticket from Barcelona to Madrid? Sent it off for translate, came back, held it up to the train guy behind the glass. He kind of read it, typed it in, and the price came up on the thing. So we were able to communicate without either of us actually talking. So this stuff exists right now. You've got the Apple App Store, the iPhone App Store, which has become incredibly popular. We're seeing people buy applications. You've got the Marketplace on Android. You've got Nokia's App Store. You've got BlackBerry's App Store and the Palm App Store. Which platform do you pick? Well, again, HTML5 can be your friend. Gmail, for example, and I can show this to any of you who are interested later, is a really nice experience on a phone. Why? Well, what we tried to do is say you shouldn't have to worry about what platform you're coming from. Is this going to load? Yes. I'll leave it to play in the background. And it's Alex, who is one of the engineers. He's talking for a little bit. So let me just full screen this. But you'll see from the presentation, all you have to do is go to gmail.com, not mobile.gmail, not m.gmail, not gmail.com/mobile, anything. You just go to gmail.com. We'll work out that you're coming from a phone, and we'll improve the experience so that it's the best for you. You'll see here, this is the regular Gmail that you know and love. You've got features like menu, compose, delete, archive, more. You've got the stars on the right-hand side. You can click a message. It'll open up on your phone. And it's just a web page. It just works. So if you're wondering how to dip into mobile, build lightweight web pages that just work on phones. That'll help you understand which phones are coming to your website. If you see that 90% of your users are coming from iPhone versus coming from Android, or all of them are coming from BlackBerry, well then that will help you understand that that's the application that you need to build to cater to your users. But again, don't take the risk. Don't put all your eggs in one basket without first understanding who your audience is. Okay. Finally, augmented reality. This is probably not going to be relevant to many of you, but I just think it's incredible. I saw it a couple of days ago. The British Museum, the London Museum, have launched an augmented reality app. How many of you understand the term augmented reality? Okay, a few. I guess there's a Dutch company called Layer that have put it in front of a lot of people. There's another company called Wikitude, who are based in Austria, who have done something else. The idea is your phone has a camera, has a GPS chip, and a compass. It knows where you are, it knows what you're looking at, and the direction you're looking at. And so you can hold up your camera, and overlaid on your camera, you can have new features laid on top. Traditionally, this has been things like, nice places to go nearby. And you can do map search on it. So I use Wikitude. There's a place in London called Soho, and it's like a maze of streets, and I still get lost. You go in one way and come out another, and you're like, how did I get here? So I'll do a search for somewhere that I need to be in Soho, and I'll be walking around like this, knowing at least I'm going in the right direction, because it's got the marker on my map. If I move, it says it's this way. So it's traditionally been used just to kind of add information to the real world. These guys, the London Museum, have done something that absolutely blows my mind, and hopefully it'll impress you guys too. What they've done is, it's for iPhone, so if you've got an iPhone, grab it, and if you're in London, use it. I'm going to, walk in front of this again, but it's just, I've got to. It's so cool. So here you're at Piccadilly Circus, you're standing there, you hold up your iPhone, and they're overlaying photos from up to 100 years ago of that scene directly in your camera. So you're able to see what this place looked like many years ago, sometimes 200 years ago. This one, Carnaby Street, back in the 60s, the swinging 60s, Austin Powers car there. And this one is my all-time favorite. This is epic. This is at Hyde Park. Some crazy lady being held back by the police. Who knew? But the point is, you wouldn't have known this without having this application, but it just gives you this really interesting view into what happened in the past. And I think we're only going to see more and more features like this. Being able to point it at a restaurant and immediately get the menu and the prices and the recommendations without even having to pull up the map. Being able to go to a new city, going somewhere on holiday, and just being able to hold up your camera and find places that you like to eat. I guess the common joke is English people go abroad and eat egg and chips. So imagine I'm able to go to Greece and ignore all the great Greek cuisine, or Belgium and ignore all the great Belgian cuisine, and just find somewhere that can serve me egg and chip sandwich. For me, that's incredibly useful. It's not, but for other English people, it really would be. But augmented reality access through mobile is just going to get bigger and bigger. That's the very abrupt end of the presentation. Unfortunately, we seem to be on time. So hopefully it was useful. I guess we're going to go into a Q&A now, but thank you.